We're back on Weather Nation, taking a look out across Homewood, California, looking out over Lake Tahoe, the Lake Tahoe. Lake Tahoe, Nevada has seen some heavy snow recently coming through, and it looks like it's still coming down. You can see some of those clouds in the distance and blue sky in between. Of course, there's probably some interaction with the mountains, with the lake, leading to some different cloud patterns out there. Mountain meteorology is pretty complex. You throw a lake in the mix and it just makes it more difficult, but you can actually see some of the effects of the lake and the mountains around it right now. So we've got some snow showers that are right here around the Homewood area, which is this little cove on the far western side of Lake Tahoe here. Notice how those snow showers are sort of dissipating as they go out over the lake. And then we've got this ridge of mountains on the far side of the lake that's actually lifting that air once again. So as it's coming down the slope, it's drying out, it goes across the lake, and then it has to rise up this slope as well. And so you'll get snow on either side, or rain and anything. Orographic uplift is what this is called. And it's one of my favorite topics in meteorology, if I'm being honest, because whenever you have the ground interacting with the atmosphere, it can lead to a lot of complications in the forecast. It can be a bit of a headache, admittedly, but also leads to some very cool setups. The entirety of the Sierra Nevada is creating that uplift, leading to a lot of that moisture getting wrung out. Notice how little rain we still have across the Sacramento Valley here in Northern California. There's still moisture in the air. It just needs that extra push from the ground to start wringing it out, and we've had that over the last couple of days. We did have some rain across the San Francisco Bay Area recently, and some of those showers are starting to move out of San Jose, Morgan Hill at the moment, but still some scattered showers out over the ocean that could be coming in around the Salinas area and maybe out towards Central California over the next couple of hours. As we take a look a little bit more into the Great Basin here around Salt Lake City, we've had some pretty intense snow here recently. If we take a look from the local radar site, you can actually tell on the radar itself where some of those mountain ranges are, the benches out here, where that radar beam is just running into the foothills of the mountains, and we have sort of a radar shadow where we're not seeing anything, and you can even tell where we have some gaps between where we have a little bit more of that snow showing up on radar. So it would be covering all of these mountains. We just can't see it because of some of the interference with that radar beam. If we look over the last 12 hours, we've had some pretty impressive snow totals around this area. Outside of the Draper area, 20 inches of snow estimated by radar, and mostly along some of these mountains here along the Wasatches where we've seen that heaviest snowfall. I want to take you out to Heber, Utah here, where we see one of my favorite scenes in wintertime, where we have snow coming down over a cold stream.
It's very soothing, isn't it? I mean, the stream always is, Kit, but then you have that little nice coating of fresh snowfall. Always looks so good, and especially some of the first season snowfall. It's wetter, and it just adheres and sticks to everything.
Yeah, whenever we talk about snow ratios, how much water there is compared to how much snow falls, in the early winter and in the late or early spring, when we see the really wet, sticky stuff, it's a very low ratio.
Right, and normally a pretty standard comparison is if you get 1 inch of rainfall or precipitation, that would be 10 inches of snow, but that can vary widely. Fluffy snow is much more than that, and then the springtime, fall time snow is a lower ratio. It's wetter.
We've got a lot of winter weather advisories out across the entire Four Corners region. We're going to see some pretty significant impacts from this next system coming through. Okay,
question is, Kit, are you ready to drive in the winter snow?
I'm always ready. I had several blizzards in Nebraska where I previously worked, and there were several times driving in the snow. Of course, take it slower. If you have any areas with those chain laws, traction laws, make sure that you're following those too.
Yeah, my first piece of advice, my first go-to when it's like that is just not going out. Yep. And then if I have to, then find a way and allow a lot of extra time. But I grew up with some, not necessarily blizzards, but nor'easters. I grew up in New England, so yeah, I learned very quickly, especially with the driving and some of the hilly terrain of New England.
Yeah, and of course, if you're in the hilly terrain, you want to take it really slow around those curves. Since it's that early, wet, sticky snow, it can be really slushy too, because sometimes the ground temperatures, as this is coming down across the western slope, may still be above freezing.
It's pretty wild in the west, though. Kit and everybody is very different based on elevation. You go up 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 feet, and it's like a different world in terms of the weather. So if you're traveling, know that the conditions can change quickly. Especially
right there along that I-70 corridor. Once you go over some of those mountain passes, it could be very different from one side to the next.
That's a good point. You mentioned the upslope, and one side is drier on the lee side, and then the upslope side, you can get some heavy precipitation. Thanks so much, Kit. We're going to completely shift gears, bring in meteorologist Cassie Nall to talk about the tropics. And Cassie, some history being made in the tropical weather world today.
You know, I just realized how fitting this flow was with you two dealing with cold and snow and me being from Florida. Like, this is my home now. Let's talk about the tropics here. So we have 2 hurricanes in the Atlantic Basin right now. That's the first time that's happened in the month of November since 2001, because typically you see the number of systems gradually decrease as we go throughout the back end of the season, maybe 1 at a time, possibly 2. But to have 2 hurricanes in November obviously hasn't happened in a while.
That's interesting. So the first time in a little more than 20 years, and you would think, wow, it must have been a busy season, but not necessarily.
No.
If the season ended today, it would actually be a bit below average.
That's right. The average number of storms is 14. We have now had 13 with Martin being named yesterday. But more importantly, Lisa is about to make landfall along the coast of Belize as a Category 1 hurricane.
And this is pretty close to Belize City, and our field correspondent Josh Morgerman is there. He was relaying to us some information, some folks from the supermarket and local markets getting some of the last-minute gear and last-minute necessities, and also starting to board up some of the windows there.
Yeah, because you've got hurricane warnings up and down the entire coast of Belize. Heavy rain going to be one of the main threats, along, of course, with a hurricane coming, and you've got very strong winds as well. Once the system moves across the Yucatan Peninsula, it will kind of just meander around there in the Bay of Campeche. We also have another area with a 20% chance of development, anywhere from Puerto Rico up to the west of Bermuda. Just general low pressure is expected to form in this area.
Yeah, that other hurricane in the Atlantic, no threat to us here in the United States.